To describe it really quickly, for folks that aren't familiar, it was a website that had a million checkboxes on it, where if you checked a box, it checked it for me, and if I unchecked a box, it unchecked it for you. That was the entire website.
Know that even like the New York Times wrote an article about it. Like it really kind of went crazy.
So, as a follow-up to 1 million checkboxes, last year I made a massively multiplayer chess game, which was like it was called 1 Million Chessboards. It had a million chessboards on it. You could move. There were no turns. You could move pieces between boards. It was kind of more of an RTS than a chess game.
How did you become the guy that makes like non-traditional games in weird places?
I really love traditional Steam games, so I don't want to claim that what I do is more interesting than that. But I do think I'm better
Sure.
at this than I am at making traditional games. I think the way I got started doing this was that I had quit my job to make games.
So, Nolan, thanks for joining me today on the pod. I'm super excited because you're just a really interesting dev to have on. You don't really fit into the box of like the kind of person that I traditionally interview, in that you haven't released a Steam game. Instead, you've made much more interesting projects, like 1 Million Checkboxes, as I think your most famous one, MMO Snake, Brick Breaker inside your Google Calendar, all kinds of insane projects. How did you become the guy that makes like non-traditional games in weird places?
Uh, well, first off, thanks for having me on, Blake, and thank you. I mean, I really love traditional Steam games, so I don't want to claim that what I do is more interesting than that, but I do think I'm better
Sure.
at this than I am at making traditional games. I think the way I got started doing this was that I had quit my job to make games. Basically, the plan was like I'll make games for a bit and then maybe go do like kind of startup-y stuff. But I wanted to like get back to coding, and I was making like totally normal games, and it was, I think, actually pretty fun. Um, but I wasn't great at it, and I made some weird stuff and noticed that I was better at that. I was happier doing that. People liked that more. Like um, I think the first kind of weird thing that I made was a version of Wordle that ran inside the Firefox address bar via kind of abuse of this like weird this thing called OpenSearch. The details don't like matter that much, but I made that, and that was like the first thing I made that got any sort of online traction. I made that at like this place called the Recurse Center. That's kind of like a programming retreat thing that's in New York. Um, but I think the combination of like whatever, some amount of internet attention for making something weird, and like being at this retreat around other kind of programmers that wanted to do cool stuff, and getting like, direct feedback from people being like, that was neat. Like, you should make something else like that, was kind of what pushed me in that direction. And I don't know. I think then I had like another 6 months of like make a normal thing, not very happy with it, make a weird thing, way happier with it, and then eventually you like notice the pattern, you do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So did the Wordle project, was it just kind of by happenstance with the timing of being at the Recurse Center, or was it like your, let's just say, traditional game dev either wasn't going well or found something lacking, or was it more just like kind of happenstance?
Um, I think it was probably more the recurse thing than the. I don't want to say that like the games were going poorly. Just 'cause I was like a few months in, and I was making like a weird small game a week. Like
Sure.
obviously none of them had sold a million copies on Steam. But yeah, I had gone to this retreat, and I remember on like the first day, they kind of pair you up, or you pair yourself up with somebody else to kind of do a pair programming exercise. You like write a solution to, or I think that the exercise we did was, do you know the game Mastermind? It's actually surprisingly like Wordle.
Oh, I've heard of that. I can't quite place it, but I know I've heard of people talk about
It
this.
The basic idea is that it's kind of like I it's a two-player Wordle game, basically. Like, I choose the
Okay.
tiles and you make the guesses. It's a little more
Gotcha.
complicated than that. But anyway, for this pairing exercise, we were supposed to write a mastermind solver, and I got paired with someone, and we were like, let's write this in the dumbest language possible. Like, we're gonna write this in SQL, and that doesn't make any sense at all. But like, we're gonna write this in like the dumbest way because that'll be fun and interesting and funny for us. And it was. And I think that kind of put me in this mindset of like, oh, this is this environment where uh, I can make funny, silly, stupid things and people will enjoy it. But it turns out that like that's actually true of the internet too, right? Like, and so that's kind of how I got the start. And I remember kind of the end to that, like the end to making normal games for me was making this kind of like vampire survivors-y game. No, it's not really. It was based on this game called Bases Loaded, which is on itch, by this developer called Kinda Nice, who I think is super, super talented. But like a tiny little bite-sized, 20-minute vampire survivors game. And I took that to like a playtest with some friends who had brought really weird stuff and was just like spending the whole playtest being like, I'm miserable. Like I don't want
Mm,
feedback on this thing. I want to make something like my friend
mm.
Ellen made. And at the time that felt bad, but I think like a week later or something, it was like, no, that's just your brain telling you creatively this is not what you want to do. Creatively, that is what you
Mm.
want to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. How do you, for other people that feel like they're really interested in game dev, but maybe they also keep having these feelings of negativity, do you have any tips? How did you eventually come to that conclusion of like this intuition that maybe this actually isn't fulfilling me or making me happy?
Um yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I should say like at that point I had made I don't know, probably like 12 or 13 things that year. Like I just made, I mean, like that's not
Yeah.
the big, that's not quite a game a week, which is what I originally wanted to do, but it's like a lot of stuff, right? And so I think that was a lot of it was, it wasn't that one moment has stuck in my head as kind of the point at which I really put my
Mm,
finger on what I wanted and didn't want to do. But I think that was based on like a lot of data, right? So I think trying a thing several times, maybe pushing through a little bit, but not pushing through forever, is pretty helpful there. And I think also, I think a lot about like, been told that like envy is a really useful feeling. Like if
hmm.
you feel envious of a thing, that's
Hmm.
like, okay, well that's maybe sure you don't want to feel envious all the time. Feeling envious all the time is not very healthy. But like feeling a little bit of envy is probably just a signal from your brain that like that's a thing that you want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I'm thinking about like again in this moment I'm at this playtest and I feel envious of like a good friend of mine who had brought something that I thought was just like fundamentally more interesting and weirder than what I had done. And you can take a step back and be like, well, I don't really want to feel like envious of my good friend,
Mm,
but like
right.
I do just want to be a little, weird little guy, I guess.
Right. Yeah, maybe it's a negative emotion, but it might be pointing towards something positive, or there might
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like a hint of truth behind it or something. That's an interesting thought. I haven't heard it framed that way. Um, Also, kind of in the same thought, I'm wondering. This is just kind of a fun thought experiment. Maybe is how do you kind of differentiate between a negative feeling that is just something hard, like maybe even in some of your more recent projects, like game development's really hard. And sometimes there will be moments where you're just hitting a wall and it's not because you don't like it, it's just because that thing is hard. So how do you maybe in your projects kind of identify, oh, maybe this isn't a project I'm actually interested in versus like, this is just a challenge?
Well, that's a great question. I kind of have been thinking about adjacent things to this a lot. I think historically, including back when I did kind of more traditional software development work, mostly what I did was just kind of did things that were appealing to me, and that happened to be like relatively correlated with things that were useful. Like I like doing funky engineering stuff, and a lot of companies were kind of happy to have you, do that, and that's a lot of what I did. I
Yeah.
like talking to people and solving their problems. And I think I do kind of a similar thing mostly with my games. And so like for example, I've made several kind of big online, get a lot of people to play at once games and like that's fun for me and there are a lot of fun technical challenges there. So I'm like, "Oh, I run into this and this is really hard, but like I'm excited that it's hard." Right?
Yeah.
I'm excited that like I'm going to solve this and then I'm going to like write up how I solved it and other people can read that and that'll be fun for me. But I think that when I bump into things that are hard, like what's a good example? There are somewhat more traditional games that I want to make, but I need art assets and I cannot draw for shit. And like I am absolutely capable of and have once or twice in the past contracted out art, but that is just kind of like hard and I guess just because I don't have like a strong ongoing relationship with a talented artist that I could hit up,
Mm,
like that's like hard and all like logistical. Like I have to just
right.
kind of go, um, And there I think I'm like actually I think I'm pretty bad. Like I think I just
Mm.
don't I just kind of do the things that I want to do, and it's it's working out okay, but um I don't know. I wish I had something more useful to say there.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It's just kind of a fun thought experiment, and obviously
Yeah.
not in my prepared questions. It just kind of happened, so I just wanted to
Yeah.
hearing just kind of your thinking it through was interesting. Maybe we can somewhat tie this sort of thread back to the Recurse Center.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting. I hadn't ever even thought of this idea of like a writer's retreat for game devs, where but it also kind of makes sense. Like it feels like sort of in the vein of like a game jam. Like there's maybe a DNA there where it's like you're working on things that aren't necessarily meant to become something important, but maybe more collaborative or something. Just yeah, what's maybe do you have like maybe one takeaway from a unique benefit from the Recurse Center and just kind of approaching game dev in this maybe more collaborative or maybe more cooperative way, or I don't even know exactly what it is, but yeah, any big takeaway from it?
Yeah, I mean, I should say like Recurse is more generally like a retreat for programmers, not just game devs, although a lot of people
Gotcha.
there do make
Okay.
games.
Sure.
Someone there just made like a custom arcade cabinet that other people are putting games on, plenty of games there. Um, but I agree with the kind of there's something it's not a game jam, but there is some overlap there. And definitely I've been to like some really fun in-person game jams in New York where especially like very time limited ones, there's like a 2 hour one I really like going to where I've like worked with somebody else for that time, and I feel like sitting down like two people, one computer, let's make something, we only have a few hours, like it's gonna be bad, but like we're gonna kind of produce something that neither of us would have produced alone is really useful. I think another parallel here is how like you finish a game jam and then like you go and you play everyone else's game and you give them feedback and everyone else plays your game and you get feedback, and like I think like especially early on when like maybe you don't have another way to like get anyone to play your game, that's like really 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 cool, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think like the retreat has a similar-ish function, or it did
Mm,
for me, right? Like I had been making stuff, I was uploading it to itch. Sometimes, some people played my games, not that many, but enough that it was like cool to me at the time, because like any more than like one person was really cool to me at the time. Um, but instead to just kind of like be in a room and you can like turn around and be like, "Hey, you want to see something that I'm
right.
working on?" And like the default answer is yes, is just like really cool, right? Like um, so I think um, certainly I found that really, really, really important, to because working on your own and not getting feedback and like begging your friends to playtest another thing or whatever can get kind of tiring.
Yeah, it's also just reminding me of one of the biggest challenge of being, especially like a hobbyist dev or maybe like a person who wants to quit their 9 to 5 with game dev. Most of those people, and I think this is true of most of my audience, is that you're working by yourself, and you're working completely alone, and that's a real challenge. Like, even just the not even just getting feedback part, but just the loneliness. I mean, there's a lot of layers to that. So, um, do you currently do you try to find either like online communities or do you go to in-person communities to help with even some of the projects you're working on, or are there times you still get stuck?
I do. I do this a lot, and I think like I would benefit from doing it even more, just from the loneliness. So like,
Mm,
it's just really hard to at least I'm a social guy.
yeah.
Sitting at home alone every day is tough. I'm in New York. I'm in Brooklyn, and so I'm kind of lucky in that there are a lot of
Yeah.
places that I think like in terms of kind of creative technology stuff, Brooklyn is probably the best place to be. Or at least I don't know of a better place, maybe London. Um, so yeah, I still go back to the Recurse Center sometimes. NYU has a couple of different things. They have both a game school and like a art technology school that I've spent a lot of time at. There's a game dev co-working space in my somewhat close to me. Um, and I just have other friends in the city that I try to co-work with. But uh, yeah, I think I go kind of crazy without doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. This is a great chance for me to also do a shameless plug. If you're watching and you're not in New York, people can join my Discord. There's a place for game feedback and just hanging out. So that's been fun.
Yeah.
We launched that recently. So
Join the Discord.
uh, yeah, join the Discord. Hey, Blake here. I wanted to interrupt this episode to tell you about one really cool thing going on in the Discord. So, Corey Darby, aka Thornity, who's been on the podcast and is one of the creators of a game about feeding a black hole, which grossed over $500,000 and also worked on Click and Conquer, has agreed to host for free a masterclass / Q&A inside the Dev Dream Discord. Like I said, it's completely free. It's extremely generous of Corey to be sharing his knowledge with us. And all you have to do to be a part of that, which is coming up on May 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern, is join the Discord. The link is in the description. Now, quick note, we're doing it in the Discord instead of something like YouTube Live because they have a very cool feature called the stage. And so on a YouTube Live, you would only be able to submit questions or comments via like a typical chat by typing. But in the stage, you can actually unmute your microphone. And if you're so bold, this part's optional, even turn on your camera and come on stage with Corey and I and ask your question or leave your comment. So I think it'll be a really cool experience. And just get in the Discord if you want to be a part of that. I'll try to find a way to make the VOD available in the Discord as well. So last call for this plug. Get in the Discord. It's free. That masterclass with Corey is also free. And I'm extremely excited. And I hope to see you there. All right, let's get you back to this awesome episode with Nolan. So yeah, well, that is a very kind of cool. I think we've kind of set up your hero's journey, so to speak. So I do want to spend some time asking you about a couple of these specific wacky games. So I mentioned that I'm pretty sure, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but 1 million checkboxes you would say is like maybe the one that got the most appeal. I mean, I know that even like the New York Times wrote an article about it. Like it really kind of went crazy. Just why do you think that resonated with people so much?
Yeah. Okay. So I definitely agree. I think that is the game I have made that has had the most players. To describe it really quickly, for folks that aren't familiar, it was a website that had 1 million checkboxes on it, where if you checked a box, it checked it for me, and if I unchecked a box, it unchecked it for you. That was the entire website, or almost the entire website. Um, it. I have thought a lot about this, and I've thought a lot about things that I did well, both intentionally and unintentionally. I think some of this is just kind of like it was arbitrary. You have to get lucky. I got lucky. But I think that one, um, people really like getting to play together on the internet. Like they like to getting to interact with strangers on the internet, and I think that like there aren't that many opportunities to do that in a way that isn't like social media, but is just kind of like here is a weird kind of MMO. It's not an MMO, but you know what I mean. Like
Right.
maybe an MMO in a literal sense of like it's a massively multiplayer online something. It's not WoW, but um, I think there was something to kind of the immediacy of like you logged in and you were dropped at the top of the website, which is where everybody else was dropped. And most people like didn't scroll down. You could scroll for, like an hour to get to the bottom, but most people stayed at the top. And so you would like log in and you would just immediately see, like, oh, there are many, many, many other people that are like also clicking boxes right now. Right. And that was like just kind of like it gave you a sense of place. And then I think like there's this kind of self-perpetuating thing of like, it's so dumb. It's such a dumb idea. But then, like, once you understand that it's popular, it's more interesting, and so it becomes more popular. Like,
Yeah.
it grew in popularity for several days. Like, the Times article was like a week after launch, I think, and it was still like it was already kind of crazy popular within hours of the same. But like, yeah, there was something to like, wow, this is so stupid, and there are so many people here, and like that's. Um, I think there were a bunch of numbers on the site. You could check how many boxes were currently checked. You could check how many boxes you had checked or unchecked. Like you could make that go negative. And then I had made some boxes colored so that you could like try to check all of the green boxes or uncheck all the yellow boxes or whatever. And I think like that was surprisingly compelling to some people. Like a lot of people found it really relaxing to just kind of, it's kind of like incremental game-ish. And then I think that a big thing was people kind of decide. I didn't say this, but people decided that the goal of the website was like to check all the boxes.
Mm.
right? And that's kind of a natural, like, yeah, like that's the goal, right? But like, I don't know, I didn't say that. You can, you're bringing that. And so that meant that like if you thought that was the goal, but you kind of want to be like a little troll, like you can just spend all your time like unchecking the boxes. And I would get these stories of people being like, yeah, I like found this guy and then like he was checking boxes and I was like following behind him and like unchecking all the boxes that he was checking. And like he must have been so mad. And it's like, you don't know, like, you don't even know that he noticed you. But like, that's, it's fun to get to like tell a little story to yourself about something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And I think like a thing that so whatever, I like grew up on the internet, and I feel like the older internet had a lot of like opportunities for low stakes trolling that you like don't really get anymore in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything's just kind of different and more intense, and you don't have. And I think like that was a good example of like
Mm.
there are no stakes. It doesn't matter. Like this is a dumb little thing I made, but like you can kind of mess with other people. So, yeah, I don't know. And then I heard from a lot of people that it reminded them of the old internet. I think that is some of what they meant is like, I put maybe a surprising amount of thought into an unmonetized thing that had no stakes and was just kind of whimsical and
Mm.
weird. And people kind of like that sometimes.
Yeah, that's so true. That's not something I've thought about, of how the internet has really ramped up in the intensity of trolling. Like, there were all these opportunities to do something that was completely not harmful. Like, and that's like a good prank. Like a good-natured prank is something where like everyone at the end is laughing. But you can go too far, obviously. And then so like also in this conversation, I've heard you talk about how, anytime you put something on the internet, someone's going to try to ruin it and put like either a slur or a penis or
Yeah.
whatever. And so I know you think about that with your games. With 1 million checkboxes, do you have any interesting solutions to keep people from, taking the trolling too far?
I did. Yeah, yeah. I think about this a ton. I've thought about this with every kind of collaborative online thing I made. For 1 million checkboxes, the big thing was that the number of checkboxes in like a row would scale to the size of your browser. So if you were on your phone on a small screen, maybe there'd be like 10 boxes in a row. And if you were on your laptop on a big screen, maybe there's like 30 boxes in a row or whatever. And the point is like, there's not that much you can do with checkboxes, but you can draw. And if you can draw,
Mm-hmm.
you can like write slurs and like, it's just not fun. Like, I just don't want that.
Yeah.
Drawing a dick with checkboxes would be kind of funny. But like the first
Right.
time, it's not going to be funny the 50th time.
Yeah.
So the point is, if you just say like, okay, well, the number of checkboxes, it depends on the size of your screen, well, then anything you draw will only be visible to other people with like the exact same size display. And I decided that was like good enough. Like, I think it wasn't in fact perfect, but I feel like you don't need perfect here. Like, you're on the internet, you're an adult. I guess in this case, maybe there were some kids on here, but like in general, like you're on the internet, there is some chance that you're going to stumble over something nasty. But there's a big difference between like it being this exception and it's like you go to a site and like literally the first thing that you see is like that it's been,
Mm-hmm.
defaced, right?
Yeah.
So that was the kind of the big hack there, which bugged a bunch of users. I think people thought it was not intentional. And I was like, no, 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 this is
Mm.
extremely intentional.
Yeah, that's interesting that it bothered people, because I think also part of the genius in it is just how unintrusive it is. Like, it doesn't really change your experience all that much. I mean, like in a positive way, I mean. Like, you're kind of getting the
Mm.
same experience even without. Um in that same vein, were there any other games where you had an interesting solution to kind of protect people from the online defacing, as you said, as in some way?
Yeah, I mean, I think my favorite version of this, like the first good multiplayer game I made, was a few years ago. I made this thing called Stranger Video, and this was not popular in the U.S. It was popular in Japan, which is really cool.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but it was a website that showed you live video of a stranger's face until one of you blinked. But what it did is that it used like face detection. Like there's really good face detection that'll give you like a rectangle around the face to crop video to only show faces and to not to immediately kill the call if you tried to show anything that wasn't a face. And then there was
Mm.
also no text chat and no voice chat. So I was thinking about, like, man, like I actually kind of enjoyed like chat roulette when I was a kid occasionally, except for all of the ways that I didn't enjoy it. And, what if you could build something like that, but like it was mostly fun? And this is an attempt to do that. And I think it basically worked. I think some people probably did smuggle gross stuff onto it eventually, but it was mostly, yeah, like I said, it like popped off in Japan, which is crazy. And it was mostly there a game of trying to make the other person laugh, because if they laugh, they
Mm.
close their eyes and then like the connection cut. So you like I like would match with someone, and like I remember someone had just like I matched with someone and they just taken like the world's biggest vape hit, and then they just like blew smoke at me for like 15 seconds until I hung up the call. We had people in costumes. But yeah, I mean I think that there's like a really fun thing. I've given a few talks about this, although it's been a while. There is like you come up with these constraints to try to like prevent people from trivially being jerks. And then what happens is that they notice the constraints, at least some of them do, and then they're like, okay, how can I kind of play within these constraints in a fun way? And then you get these
Mhm.
funny stories of like none of the behavior that I saw from folks in Japan on this site would have been there if the constraints weren't there, I don't think. Like I think it was
Mm.
purely like people being like, okay, like my interaction is super restricted. Like what's something fun we can do? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It actually reminds me of just like I feel like that's a theory of like I'm a big Magic the Gathering fan, and so I feel like there's a fun in in the deck you make to say, well, I'm only gonna pick this thing. Like I'm only gonna pick cards with shovels in them or like some crazy thing. And so like I think with even all kinds of games, yeah, there's a way our brains do this funny thing where when there's some kind of boundary, it is actually even fun to play inside the boundary sometimes. So that's super cool.
Thank you.
Um, yeah. Were there any with that project? I did see your article about that. I don't think I read the whole thing, but were there any fun challenges of creating that project?
It was like the first website I'd ever made. Definitely the first interactive like thing online I'd ever made, and so most of the challenges there were like I had no idea what I was doing. The website's actually pretty ugly. Like I can make a pretty website now, but I like literally just didn't know
Yeah.
how to do that, and I like didn't even know what I didn't know. So I think most of the challenges were there. Um, Eventually, like the way that the site works, it's kind of serving as a video relay between like you and me. And I think eventually some people did try to like kind of abuse that to like run
Mm.
their own video through it for their own purposes. So I had to figure out how to shut that down. But I think most of the oh, and I guess I didn't know how to do hand or face tracking when I made it. So it was really fun to like kind of learn how to do something like that, especially in like a privacy preserving way. Like I don't keep any data or anything like that. It all happens on your device. Um, but I don't know. I think that was largely like I had the idea and it came pretty fully formed, and then I was just like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go make this.
Yeah, is that how a lot of your project starts? Like they just start with sort of a wacky idea, or do you ever start with like here's this technical thing I want to kind of solve or play with, or is it multiple? Where's your inspiration come from?
It's so I feel like there's two different questions there. The inspiration thing I think is hard.
Oh,
But in
sure.
terms of like ideas, for kind of the more experimental, like I want to get people to play together thing, I think it's normally starts with an idea of, I want to do video calls, but, with anyone. And then there's a problem.
Hmm.
People will show things other than their faces on these video calls. And then as soon as I like arrive at a solution, then I'm really pumped, and then I just go make it. So I think that, the checkboxes or Stranger Video or a bunch of other projects are all kind of that form of start with an interaction, think of ways that people will break it, and then
Mm.
if I can fix that, go make the game. And then a lot of the time, I can't come up with a satisfying constraint to prevent people from being jerks, and so I don't make the game.
Hmm.
Um, I think some of the other stuff that I do that's the more like I ran a game in a place that it shouldn't go starts more from a
Right.
I want to technically push myself. Um, And yeah, I don't actually know how to answer the inspiration part. I feel like I play, games all the time and read a lot and talk to a lot of cool people, but in terms of like um what actually pushes me to want to make an idea, I think that's kind of I don't know. You just kind of wake up that way one day where you're like, I really want to make this
Yeah,
thing.
that's definitely in the abstract area. And so yeah, you did answer the question I was getting at.
Okay.
Um, yeah, for sure. Do you have any of your games that you think was the most fun?
So as a follow-up to 1 Million Checkboxes, last year I made a massively multiplayer chess game, which was like, it was called 1 Million Chessboards. It had a million chessboards on it. You could move, there were no turns. You could move pieces between boards. It was kind of more of an RTS than a chess game. And I grew up playing a lot of RTS. Like I don't know. There's a poster obscured behind me on my wall of me. Like this is from a professional Brood War game that I went to a few years ago. I've like played a lot of StarCraft in my life, and so getting to make something that kind of felt like an RTS was really fun. And I found that actually the moment to moment gameplay of chess, but there aren't any turns and you're just kind of trying to like micro all your pieces to like capture the other guy's pieces, was just actually really sick. Like I had all these like
Yeah.
head to head matches with other people on the site, and it was just really, it was really, really fun. Um, so I think that was probably the thing that I was like logging onto the most, uh, just purely to like be a gamer. Like there were, like the Stranger Video experience was pretty interesting. I was on my Checkboxes website a lot because it was blowing up and that was like interesting to me. But in terms of just like this is just a video game I made and now I'm playing it with people, I think it was real-time chess.
Yeah, it's awesome that you picked that because I actually had a bit of a question about that one. I actually wrote down some stats just so people can kind of understand that the game, this was also pretty popular. So I think you wrote in your blog 10 days after launch, over 150,000 players had made over 15 million moves and hundreds of millions of queries. So, I mean, the game also like went kind of crazy. Like that's kind of an insane amount of people going to this thing that you made. And you also said this is really interesting that the game runs out of just a single process, and so you didn't like touch the thing over 10 days.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of crazy. So help me understand when you say you like played against someone. Does that mean you just is it similar to 1 million checkboxes where you just kind of ended up on the same place of the website?
Yeah, so one thing I had on the site, and I like advertised this feature really poorly, was so you went to the site and you're assigned white or black, right? And you're just looking at this massive grid of chessboards, and you can like zoom in and out and pan around and kind of all of that. Um, and there was like a button you could press. It did try to like drop you next to somebody else who was playing because
Okay,
obviously like 1,000 by
right.
1,000 grid of chessboards is like a very large space. So if you just click on a random area, you might not see anyone. But there's also a button you could press that would take you to somewhere in this space where one of your color's pieces was recently captured. And like that's like a nice heuristic for like, okay, like I'm playing white, a white pawn was captured in this area recently. That means there's probably a player playing black like in this area too. And so I would like go and I would hit that button and it would take me to somebody who was like moving around. And maybe there were like 5 people there, but sometimes it was like just some dude, moving a queen around capturing pieces. And then I would just start grabbing pieces and like moving them too. And like then they
Right.
notice, right? And they're like, all right, like
Yeah.
now, you're on. Um and that was kind of what I enjoyed, was these kind of then like heads up, like I feel like the rule was kind of like whoever captures, like both of us are mostly moving one piece, and if
Sure.
I capture the piece that you're moving most of the time, then like I'm the winner.
That's
um
awesome.
but there was also, you could link like in the URL to a specific position. So I remember on I think it was on Twitter, someone in my like one of my threads about the game posting like, I'm at this position, bring a piece, like 1v1
Come find me.
me. Yeah.
That's actually awesome.
Which was really, that was really sick.
Yeah. That's super cool. Did the pieces have any kind of like respawn timer, or how did the game not end? Is it just big enough?
It's just so big. It's just
Yeah.
so like, so it's 1,000 by 1,000, right? So that's
Wow.
a million boards. That's 64 million squares. It's 32 million pieces.
Wow.
32 million is just a really big number.
Yeah.
People did eventually write these like large scale bots that moved a lot of the pieces around and tried to capture
Oh, sure.
everything. But in terms of like, you just need so many people to actually capture every piece. And I like didn't really give you tools to like find every piece in the 64 million square
Sure.
board. So
Yeah. Super cool.
yeah.
Are you usually just leaving these multiplayer websites up for like a limited time? I imagine you're not still running them like continuously.
Yeah, I think Stranger Video is still up, but outside that, I normally shut them down pretty fast. I also I think Stranger Video doesn't really get any play anymore. I could probably shut it down. But I didn't think about this that much until I made 1 million checkboxes, and there it felt so clear to me. Like I had made this site, it was this kind of bewildering hit, and I wanted it to I wanted to end it in a way that felt good versus kind of letting it limp along forever. Like it's
Right.
that was like a year and a half ago. Uh, if it was still running, like no one would be on it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's
Right.
not. And so instead saying like I'm, here are the rules, here is how it is going to shut down. We're going to have like a fun, nice goodbye to the site. And then we can all be like, wasn't it cool that we got to participate in this weird little internet thing
Yeah.
and kind of move on? Just feels a lot better to me.
Yeah.
So that is typically what I do.
Yeah, it reminds me like when you have a great TV show that ends on the right number of seasons, you know? Like some of them they just stretch on too far and you're like, yeah, if I rewatched it, I'd probably only watch the first like 4 to 6 seasons. But when some of them get it just right. And it's kind of more like that. Like you leave it with a feeling of yeah, just a good feeling about it. So that's wise. I think that makes sense to me.
I think that's exactly right. I think that's kind of what I have in my head. It's like
Yeah.
I watch a ton of movies. I hate it when I watch a movie that I think is good but overstays its welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Just like,
Yeah.
no, I really want to end, having only positive thoughts about this thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think there's any way to bring that kind of feeling into game design? Like thinking about more traditional games? Like I don't really think about games in the same way, I don't think, but I also don't play a ton of super long games. So maybe there is something there to think about. I don't know. What do you think?
I do. I mean, I think that a lot of games are too long. I don't think that's like a super hot take, right? Like I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I'm the 5 millionth person to say that this year. Not all. So I think like the weirder and indier you go on average, the shorter you get,
Yeah.
right? But I think I really like playing short games. I love playing a game that I can potentially beat in one sitting. I think that does a lot,
Yeah.
right? Like it's if I play a game and it's kind of interesting and it's 2 hours long, it's just really hard for it to leave like a particularly bad taste in my mouth. Similarly, like if I play a game, like if I'm playing games from a jam or something like that, and they're 3 minutes long, like that's awesome, right? That's really
Mm-hmm.
cool. Um, I don't know. I think that it's hard with more traditional games because one, you have like some section of a player base who is, and I was this way when I was a kid, like, they're 14 and they don't own and they can't afford to own, which makes sense, that
Yeah.
many different games, but they have so much time and so they really want, a map game with like 400 hours of content. And also they
Mm.
haven't played that many games, so the content is really interesting versus being kind of repetitive. Um I don't know. I think you have kind of some annoying incentives there, but
Yeah, that's a good
I
point
don't know.
just
Did
on
you
the
did you
No,
play
go ahead.
Blueprints?
No.
Okay. Can I? This isn't really a spoiler. Can I say? Do you know Blueprints, the puzzle
Yes, I'm
game phenomenon?
familiar.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
listen to a bunch of podcasts about it. Yeah, very, very familiar. And yeah, feel free. Say whatever.
Okay. I will. This should not be a spoiler in any meaningful sense. Blueprints does this weird thing where you accomplish the original stated objective of the game, and the game tells you you beat the game, but there's a lot more you could do. Do
Mm.
you want to keep doing that? And some people I think see that and are like, no, I beat the game. I'm going to move on.
Yeah.
And I, as an avid puzzle game player, was like, no, like I haven't solved all the puzzles. I got to solve all the puzzles. And I thought that worked really well. But then
Mm.
Blueprint's is a very deep game, a lot of weird puzzles, a lot of kind of ARG style stuff towards the end. And I think I got like that, whatever. I beat the game at, 15 or 20 or I have no idea, but like not that many hours. And then on like hour 100, I was deep into the like weird ARG stuff. And I kind of needed the game to give me that off ramp again and be like, hey,
Yeah,
okay, now you're in the weird zone. And like,
right.
do you want like,
A second fake ending is what you
yeah,
needed. No, that's a really good thought process. Like an ending, but where there's more content. Like the only game I'm thinking of that kind of does that is Hades, where you beat the game and you could feel satisfied. And if you're just like maybe you're 15 or 20 hours in, or you can be like, well, if you do it again, you get to learn a little more. And so
yeah,
there is like a little bit more incentive. So maybe that's something interesting for people to think about. Is like, is there maybe an exit ramp that's not too far down the road, but the
yeah.
road keeps going if you want it to. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think like this is probably taste based. I really like this with like, I love Neon White and Celeste. And in both
Yeah,
of those
big fan of both of
games,
those. Hmm.
yeah, like beating the game, it's not easy, but it's not that
Hmm.
hard. But
Right.
getting the golden strawberries in Celeste, like pretty hard.
Yeah.
Or getting like red medals in Neon White, very hard. And I think I happen to just like hard but fast paced and fair seeming platformers. So like those are the
Mm.
the examples I'm going for. But there where it's like I can choose to put another however much time I want to in, but it's kind of unrelated to actually beating the game is something that I really like.
Yeah, Neon White's a really fun example too. I think I found that game. It might have even been like Game Maker's Toolkit maybe did a video on it, but it's just like very clever in this same sense of like you can just play each level like one time and just have a kind of nice experience, or you can go as insane as you want and try to break every world record. Like it goes crazy. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of fun. I do want to spend a little time just kind of transitioning to like maybe like a dev portion of the conversation, so to speak. Um, I know you mentioned early on that you sort of started with maybe more traditional Steam games. Do you think you'll ever get back to that, or are you pretty content just building wacky stuff?
I would like to. I am playing with some ideas now, or I'm thinking more about how can I kind of take the wackier things that I like doing and then maybe make something a little more uh real and sellable. Um some that's like it's an interesting challenge. Some of that is I play a ton of game. Like I love games. I want to make um and then I have a couple of I think none of these are like I don't know how much trouble I would get in, probably not that much, but none of these are like public things, but I'm making games for a few people this year that will
Oh,
be
cool.
at least somewhat more traditional. One of those will be like kind of a physical installation thing, and then a few others will be kind of online. But I think the expectation for most of those is like pretty weird because I'm making it, but like can be played by players like in a physical space and they will be like, yes, I am playing a
Yeah,
game. Like I'm clearly playing a game. And so I think that'll be a fun challenge. But yeah, I would love to. It's just there's only so many hours, and also
right.
sometimes when I sit down to make normal games, I just feel like I'm terrible at it.
Mm.
I spent like a month doing this in I think I spent November doing this maybe and just kind of threw everything out and was like this is all bad. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
really interesting. Does it come back to this piece of like art? Because I feel like you've made such interesting projects that have even gotten like way more widespread attention than like the average indie game or the average Steam game. Why do you think you get tripped up?
I think the logistical stuff is probably some of it, but I think it's more like I'm making a thing and I'm like I don't feel like I have anything interesting to say in this
Mm,
genre.
okay.
Like I think that I think like I have my own I think useful theory of like how to get strangers to interact in a pleasant way on the internet. I think like I've thought a lot about this. There aren't that many people that are thinking about it. I'm like good
Mm.
at it. Not in a like, oh, look at me sort of way, but just in a kind of like there aren't that many people doing this sort of way.
No, for real.
Um
Yeah.
but if I sit down and I'm like, I'm gonna make a, whatever I'm gonna make a 2D platform. Like I have nothing to add to that genre. Like absolutely not. Like I would need, I need like 5 years of work to add anything there. And so there are places that I kind of do have some more interest and maybe a little more knowledge, but I think that's kind of what holds me back.
Yeah, have you considered making what has been maybe lovingly or maybe negatively affection like a friend slop game? Like that feels to me, knowing your projects, like maybe the indie dev version of the kind of projects you do.
That's a great. I feel like no. No, I probably should think more about that. I should probably think more
Oh,
about that.
sure.
It's, I mean,
Yeah,
I
that
like, it's the friend slap. I guess I've thought a lot about like, there's this weird like making games that are good to stream is really good for you, and that feels strange, right? And I
yeah.
think like friend slap is kind of an outgrowth of that phenomenon, right?
Mm.
Like, it's are the friends in friend slap your friends, or the friends in friend slap like the 18 different streamers that are going to stream this game
Oh,
together and
yeah.
convince
Okay.
people to,
Okay.
um and that's not a dig at any like
Yeah.
uh, I think like I don't play that many games like that, but when I've played them, they've been a good time. And also, it's cool that people can stream video games and make a living doing it. So like, no, but um, yeah, that's a weird ecosystem, right?
Right. Yeah, it is definitely a weird ecosystem. Um, and yeah, it's an interesting point of thinking more like not just playing with your friends, which is what that is, but it is true that you've done a better job of like strangers on the internet, maybe finding cool ways to interact. So maybe, yeah. Anyway, I was just thinking that just was an interesting
No,
question
it's
that
a great
popped into
thought.
my
It's
head.
a very
Yeah.
hopeful thought. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm also curious just how you describe like the kind of dev you are. Like, do you just say you're a game dev? Or are you still a programmer? Just how do you describe what you do?
I struggle a lot with this. I mean, it depends a lot on the setting. I think like um for if I'm talking to like totally traditional game developers that are unlikely to be familiar with both my work and with like other reference points, that like other like maybe not that like most people I meet are like familiar with what I do, but a reasonable number of people are maybe familiar with like other kind of similar
Mm-hmm.
things. But if I don't have that, I'm just kind of lost. I'll say like I make games, and people
Mm.
are like, "What kind of games?" And I'm like, "It's really hard to describe. I don't know. I make massively multiplayer experimental games, and then I trick computers into doing weird stuff, and like nerds like reading about that, and then they ask questions like, "How do you make money?" And it's always uncomfortable. But the way that I think about myself is that I am somewhere between a game dev and like an internet artist. And
Yep.
then also, I am someone who really likes writing for engineers about doing engineering. And like, those are very different things, right? Like, I really like making 1 million checkboxes, but I also really like one of the projects that I am most proud of is a website called everyuuid.com, which is purely a joke for programmers. It doesn't make any sense to people that aren't like relatively serious programmers. There's a whole blog post that I wrote up imagining a character that doesn't make any sense that was popular with a very specific type of person and utterly unexplainable to anyone else. And it's all kind of weird engineering-y stuff. And I like doing that. I've been programming for much longer than I've been making games. And so I think I still kind
Mm.
of think of myself that way too.
Yeah. Does it seem like most of your audience is programmers? Because I'm more like in the indie game dev scene, and I didn't know about you until the episode of the stand up came out. That was my first time interacting with your content, and then I was like, oh, this is awesome. So,
I would say that by far the most common way that people are like, if I am talking to people that are kind of programmery people that are also relatively online and kind of like creative coding type people, I think like there's a relatively good chance that they are familiar with something that I have made. Um, or if I'm talking to somebody who's like an avid reader of Hacker News, there's a reasonable chance that they're familiar with something I've made. And then outside of that, there's like no shot. um, so I think like with like the multiplayer, big multiplayer things, I think those tend to kind of fan out to more right
yeah,
like just normal people. But a lot of the stuff that I make is the way I think about it is like the Wordle game I mentioned a while ago. That's not really a game. Like no one's playing that. But it was popular on the internet because I wrote a blog explaining how it worked and people wanted to understand how it worked. But that's like a very specific type of person, right?
sure.
So that's like half the audience, and then hopefully sometimes it makes something that escapes containment.
Yeah. Yeah, that you mentioned you also think of yourself as a writer and you really enjoy writing. And that kind of I was just interested also because I'm not really a writer, but I'm on YouTube. I like being on YouTube. And so I noticed that you kind of dabbled on YouTube. You did like 2 full videos and 1 short. They actually did really well, but I know it's like a totally different skill set. So did you enjoy like trying to kind of transition from writing to YouTube?
It's hard to say. I love writing. I like giving talks. I give a lot of talks, and I think I'm like good at giving talks. And the hope with YouTube was that I could kind of do a similar thing.
Yeah.
Um, and I think and I was just talking to some people that are much more knowledgeable about YouTube than I am. And they were being encouraging to me. So maybe I'll give it another shot. But I think I really struggled to, what I wanted to do was take the style that I have when I give a talk and
Mm,
translate that to YouTube, but in a way that wasn't literally like me with slides, because like
sure.
I think I understand that that's probably not quite what people are looking for, right? And I think I struggled with that. And there's a bunch of, whatever thumbnail annoying stuff that goes with YouTube too, although whatever, I think I could figure that out if I could improve at least if I was a little more
Mhm.
determined. But yeah, I think it was more, I felt like I was spending a ton of time editing and doing other things that I'm not good at and unable to, relative to the speed at which I can produce a talk and then like go give it in some physical space, was just kind of not able to do that on YouTube. But I would like to go back to it.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm sure there's also a happy medium in not a slideshow, but that's also not too much work, like, or you would need to, like, hire a professional editor or something, like, I'm sure there's a middle ground. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, those 2 videos you put out, I think one of them had, like, over 100,000 views, so clearly,
Yeah.
like, the ideas, I mean, that's, like, the main thing with YouTube, that resonated, so, um, yeah, anyway, thanks for sharing that, I was just curious. Would you just call yourself a blogger then, or are you on more places on the internet than just blogging that I didn't catch?
Yeah, I would say that's about right. I think like I blogged at the companies I was at back when I was at normal companies a lot. Now I blog on my blog, and I love reading blogs, and I think like, this is not the best time. Text on the internet was in a better spot 15 years ago than it is now. So, I'm aware of that, but like, uh, in my head, a project isn't complete until I write it up, and there are
Mm.
still a lot of people that like reading things on the internet, and so I write for those people.
Yeah, I'm wondering, it reminds me of this idea that I've heard people in the game dev YouTube space kind of talk about. I'm wondering if you ever feel this with your projects, but it's this idea that at some point, for some people, there becomes this weird relationship between, and maybe it's because they initially are starting as a game developer that's sharing their stuff online. And then it creates this weird thing where they're like, well, now I need to post a YouTube video because I feel this pressure. So then I have to work on my game and I have to do something interesting. And a lot of game dev isn't interesting enough. So they like feel this weird tension of like doing something that's interesting enough and feeling this pressure to put something out. Do you ever feel that with your projects and your content?
Um, Sometimes, I mean, I think I benefit a lot by making lots of small things. Like, it's rare that I work on something for more than a month. And so I can just make the thing and then do a write up that's only about the interesting parts. And I'm much less likely to have, like, my impression is that for a medium sized game, it's very likely that you have like a multi month period that's kind of a slog where you don't necessarily have that much obviously interesting thing to say for
Right.
YouTube. Which isn't, I think, like, actually probably a lot of what you're doing is really interesting, because like most people's jobs are really interesting, but
Yeah.
it's hard, right? Like, I understand that it's a lot of work to translate that into like a
Hmm.
good 13-minute YouTube video.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I get to skip some of that by making smaller things. Um, but I do, yeah, I think it's one thing that maybe bugs me here is like, because I want to write about everything that I do, and at least at some points have been like, oh, I should probably make more videos too. That causes you to be in your head like as you're working about like, what is this
Mm.
interesting? Like, should I be recording this for later? Like, I have some friends that are, um make a lot of TikToks about the things that they make, or shorts, whatever. And they're always thinking about like, I should be recording, like, especially like people that
Mm,
make physical things. They're like, I need to record all of the footage of me assembling this because it's good B-roll for the video that I'm making later. And I hate that. Like, I hate being in my
yeah,
head like that. Like, I just want to
yeah.
make the thing. And I don't really understand. Like, they're very good at it, so it must not, ruin their day. But I would find that so distracting.
Yeah, and just always, it's just the mental load of that as well, to have to like kind of check mark every part of your process to see, is this interesting, is it not, like, and maybe it becomes second nature and isn't a problem at some point. But yeah, I resonate with that seems valid. Do you think there's any room, you mentioned like the written internet being a lot more popular like 15 years ago. Do you think, a lot of my audience is indie devs, do you think there's any world for like new blogging for people that want to do maybe not exactly what you're doing, but sharing, maybe the YouTube game dev, but in written format? Do you think there's a world for that to be successful?
I think so. I mean, I think it's hard, but I think like starting a channel on YouTube is also hard. And there's probably some advantage to doing something in like a space where there are fewer
Mm,
people doing things. Like, I still prefer to read. I do watch videos, but I still prefer to read things, and I've read a lot of game dev content. And not that I have the most popular blog in the world, but like, I've gotten a lot of people to read some of the things that I
yeah.
write. Like, there are still like, it's less popular than YouTube, but there are built like a billion people on the internet, right? Like, you don't need that many people, or that a large percentage of those people, in order to have a large readership.
Yeah. Before we kind of transition to the little wrap up section here, I do always ask my Discord that I mentioned if they have any questions for a guest, and the most liked comment. So this is a little bit of just kind of random, like it's not really in the flow of the conversation, but I did say, "Hey, Nolan's coming on if you want to ask him," so I don't want to forget. Um, Connor says he would love to know how, in your creative process, you get through the initial momentum to get a project started. What's the planning process like, and how much of the idea is discovered along the way?
Yeah. So I think I start with a kernel of I start with the like, okay, it's gonna be a website and it's gonna have these checkboxes, or it's gonna be, we're gonna be looking at strangers' faces or whatever. And I always have something like that. And I think like in general, the stuff I make, relative to kind of traditional games, is often a pretty pure expression of one idea, right? And so I think I do benefit from that. Um, but I have that. All of my planning happens in these. Oh God, I have one right out of view. I have like the world's. Sorry, I have the world's biggest notebooks.
Oh,
And
that's
I
awesome.
do all of my planning in those. So I have one of those that's just filled with game dev stuff. And I think the initial stuff is really hard. I think what has helped me most is that I've made just a ton of things, both like that have been popular, and a lot that have been extremely unpopular. But like, I have done it a lot of times, and I now have, and I had this for like traditional game dev too, but like a um kind of a default. Like, if I am building a website, I know I have a command I can run on my computer that sets up like the website the way that I want to start out. And then there's no longer an empty page, and I kind of can just like fill in a lot of the stuff there very, very, very quickly. And I think like once you have that and have something to iterate on, it goes a lot faster. Um, I think I've also found that starting from a place of excitement where I will
Mm,
make that template and then like spend 8 hours getting it into some state is really useful. And if I don't do that, if I like start and then I go do something else, there's like a decent
mm.
chance that it's gonna be a while before I come back with like you need a lot of momentum at the start, and then you're good.
Yeah,
So
thanks for
I
sharing
think
that.
that
And
helps me.
yeah, and Connor, thanks for the question. Appreciate it. Okay, I think I'll just leave you with one final question. I think you've kind of talked about the other question I was going to ask about, just what you're planning to do. But To wrap it up, this is the Dev Dream podcast, and I originally created it to inspire mostly myself, but also other people by just hearing about what other cool developers have going on. And I always think it's helpful to find out what people are thinking about, dreaming about. So for you, Nolan, what would you say is your dev dream in this season of life?
Ooh, what does a reasonable answer to this question look like? Like, how
I guess
do
maybe
you know what I mean?
another way to frame the
Yeah.
question is, what do you hope to be able to make or to be able to share or for people to know about you? Uh, or what is some output you hope for? What is something you want people to think or to feel about your work? There's lots of ways to answer the question. It's really just kind of, what are you, what's the sort of abstract thing you're aspiring to, maybe?
Think I want to make more people have fun on the internet. Ideally, a lot more people. I think on the internet there is really important to me. Like, I don't, I do just want to make people have fun in general. But yeah, I don't know. I have really enjoyed growing up on the internet and playing together with people, and I want to make more things that contribute to that legacy.
Yeah, well, Nolan, that's a fantastic dream. I hope you're able to continue to make it a reality. Thanks for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Blake. Thanks for having me on. This was super fun.
Awesome.